That's right. Welcome in. Welcome back, everybody. I don't know how this one's going to go. We have to discuss an extremely controversial take, in my opinion, that came out of a national 247 recruiting experts Twitter account last night that I've been having some back and forth issues with. We need to discuss it. Welcome into the Always Irish Show. Happy to be here. Happy to have you here with me. Obviously, you can find the program on YouTube. Do it. Subscribe if you haven't yet. Appreciate it very much. Give the video a thumbs up. That helps me as well. Notifications on. You know why. That way you're alerted every time a new episode drops. You don't want to miss it. Twitter, search bar, Always Irish Rat. Always Irish Inc. Emails, alwaysirishnD@gmail.com. Audio only. Anywhere you want me, you can get me. Colon line 312-900-8815. You tell Johnny, oh, you've heard and seen Fighting Irish Wire. Type it into Google every day and then read about Notre Dame football. It's going to be awesome. All right. So here's the deal. I'm scrolling through Twitter, minding my own business, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Happy my White Sox are back on TV last night. I'm scrolling. And I come across Cooper Patagna, a 247 national recruiting guy. I believe he's down in SEC territory. That may matter for what we're getting into. It may not. I don't know. But I'm noting that I believe his territory is more southeast. Okay. And he had a very controversial statement, in my opinion, about the way Freeman's recruiting Notre Dame compared to the way Brian Kelly recruited Notre Dame. I'm going to show you on screen what he said, and then we're going to discuss whether it's right or wrong, or right but lacks proper nuance and filling. We're going to go over where we're at on this, because it's a very interesting topic. And I could see different logic strands, but they're not all connected. So I'm going to go over that. Let's show what was actually said so we make sure we have the quote exactly right. I don't want to do anybody wrong with that. All right. Here's what we got. I don't think Notre Dame's current recruiting is very different than how Brian Kelly recruited Notre Dame. Okay, so that's where we're starting out here. Okay, I don't think Notre Dame's current recruiting is very different than how Kelly recruited Notre Dame. All right, here's my initial question with this. By recruiting, does he mean like where your ranking falls at the end of a class, like your recruiting rank? Because I can't really argue that with the losses of the guys in the top end of the last recruiting class that knocked us down from top 5, top 6, top 7 down, top 10-ish or lower, I cannot practically argue that class ended up in a range where most Brian Kelly classes did. So if it was specified that the guy just said, in the first year of Freeman, the class ended up where a Kelly class was, that is true. I can't dispute that because it did end up there. But there's a lot of nuance in how it got there that has to do with this that does make it different than Kelly. And the other philosophical question is, when I read, I don't think Notre Dame's recruiting is very different than how it was. While I just conceded that if you're simply looking at where the ranking is between Freeman's first class ultimately and run-of-the-mill Brian Kelly, it's in the ballpark. I can't deny that. But if you look at this as you don't think their current recruiting is very different, if you want to go down the path of not the end result and where it ends up on 247, but if you're looking at, when I read this, I look at procedure. Like when I say their current recruiting isn't very different, I look at the structure in Notre Dame's recruiting operation now. It's night and day and almost every single day than when Brian Kelly was here. It is. Practically speaking, the entire thing is night and day. Freeman recruits Notre Dame 100% differently than Kelly recruited Notre Dame. So maybe some of that is just how you're framing this, or what he means by, I don't think their current recruiting is very different than how Kelly recruited it. He didn't specify just the result or the procedure. All right. So then he puts this out, immediately gets bombarded by all Notre Dame fans, myself included, piling on him saying it's night and day difference. Like, look at the 5 stars Freeman was involved in that we ultimately didn't get, admittedly, for various reasons. Nefarious, maybe. Innocent, maybe. I don't know. But it's like, I look at things like that. Freeman was in the mix for a lot of 5-star top-end guys. Kelly never even would have went at or put in the time or spent the recruiting effort to build relationships in. Kelly never would have got us to a point to even be rejected by those guys in the 11th hour. Who was the last 5-star Kelly had? Jalen Smith? How many years ago was that? So it's like, it's a totally different operation. Effort by a head coach, approach, messaging, blue chip rate, demanding all coaches recruit hard, opening new talent pipelines at high schools and renewing old ones, a modern appeal to Notre Dame values, creative recruiting bits like the Gold Throne. You never would have seen that in a million years at Notre Dame from Kelly. Okay? Never in a million years. So I can't argue that like the class ultimately fell where a good Brian Kelly class might fall. But that does not mean Notre Dame's not recruiting any differently than they were under Kelly. I am hopeful Freeman will recalibrate some of what he did last year to hopefully prevent some of those last minute defections and all that on the top end of the class and all that, no doubt. But the actual operation itself is night and day, nothing close. And I believe that while many feel we didn't quite see the full result of all the effort and the good things Freeman is doing new at Notre Dame with recruiting, it didn't show in the final ranking last year for the last class. I'm a firm believer that all this effort is going to pay off. It's going to pay off. We're going to win more battles than we're going to lose. And the relentless effort and grind of Freeman and requiring that of all the staff, paired with the modern messaging of maintaining Notre Dame values, but making it appealing to younger guys in a modern way, all that nuance is in the mix. You didn't have any of that with Kelly. None. You didn't have any of that with Kelly. Going after these quarterbacks, not in a million years. You could give Reese for credit for a lot of that if you want. Kelly, there's a reason Notre Dame was not even spoken about of being in the mix for the top quarterbacks because Kelly refused to build the relationships with them and put in that time and effort. It's very simple. And then by the time we tried to, it was too late. We were 2 years behind a relationship building to all these other schools flirting with these top quarterbacks. So in almost every single practical recruiting way, the operation is way different. Way different. So all the Notre Dame people piled on this guy saying, what are you talking about? It's all different. And then this guy started saying, well, I know what I'm talking about. I'm a national guy. That's what he said. I'm a national guy. He said, I do this for a living. I know what I'm talking about. I know what I said. I do this for a living. That's literally a quote from him. I do this for a living. Here's my response to that. If you're going to lean back on, I know what I'm talking about, I do this for a living, that is different than just a random troll on Twitter saying Notre Dame is recruiting the same Freeman and Kelly, and here's why, and throw up rivals and go, Freeman class, a lot of Kelly's classes, they're about the same. There's no tangible difference. I expect that from a random internet troll to defend their argument. But when you do this for a living, I feel you have an obligation to do the research to look into all the stuff I just talked about. Talk to the people I did about how much paperwork Freeman was putting through the recruiting office when he first got here as defensive coordinator that they weren't prepared for and didn't have the staff to process because Kelly couldn't dream of doing that much recruiting legwork. Sniff around a little bit. Get the inside scoop on how people at Notre Dame viewed Kelly and the way he was doing things, and the administration and the relationship and the effort and the attitude. All that, the condescension. Look into all of it. As a national guy who says I do this for a living, I expect you to know this nuance and bring it up. The correct answer for Cooper on this podcast would be, with proper research, would be, yeah, they had some defections at the top end of their class. NIL's hurting them a little bit. That's unfortunate. But it's a very energetic, modern message. And it's probably going to serve Notre Dame good overall. It's a fresh message. But the first class, there were some issues. But the structure about Notre Dame's recruiting is vastly different in almost every single way. That's the right answer to this. I cannot debate you that the class ended up where it ended up. That isn't my position. My position is just leaning on that the way this guy who does it for a living did, without looking into any of the nuance or any of it, is lazy. It's lazy work from an SEC guy. That's what it is. Lazy work from an SEC guy. Then he started saying, when people were mad at him, this isn't a slight on Freeman at all. You're taking it the wrong way. Kelly's your most winningest coach of all time. It's not a diss on Freeman to say he's doing it like Kelly. Yes, it is. Again, you're showing your southernness. Yes, it is an insult, because that's the number one thing we all thought wasn't good enough with Kelly was recruiting. That was it. And you could say not winning the big games, but that is a direct result of the not recruiting enough good players and developing them. So, it just doesn't work. It doesn't work. And so I just think this is very, very short-sighted. And this is out of town. The guy doesn't get that we weren't happy with Kelly's recruiting. He's saying the guy won 130 games or whatever. It should be a compliment that I'm saying he recruits like Kelly does. No, it's an insult. That is the number one reason we wanted Kelly gone, is because he's a lazy recruiter. This is an insult, because the whole idea here is that Freeman would be way better in that regard. So this comes off to me like a guy who knew the topic was going to be Notre Dame, brings up where the recruiting class was, then looked at most of Kelly's, and then he says, I got the narrative. It's about the same. Did no research into the structure, did no looking into how much Freeman's changing the entire way the staff communicates, operates, negotiates, all of it. All of it. The new messaging, the flip in philosophy that Kelly had. We're not going after guys till we know till we know their grades are good enough and they could all get into school. Versus Freeman saying we're casting a bigger net after all the best athletes we want, and then we'll deal with the grades if we have to, but we hope they're not an issue. We want to go out and cast a bigger net. That is such a massive philosophical shift practically in all of this operation. To not go there or look at any of that, it's lazy for a guy who works for a national outlet with the credibility Rivals 247 has, a guy who does this for a living. It's your obligation to look into all the nuance and practicalities I just laid out that are totally different. So again, if he would have just said the first class, whatever, had some issues and landed where the Kelly zone is, but I see that it's being ran different, and that could I don't have an issue with that. That's not his point. So out of town guy, lazy national narrative, ignores almost all of the most important parts of this discussion, which is all the stuff changing internally with the recruiting operation. So, Mr. I do this for a living, do more research for a living.